So we decided to fire Gavin on the spot and then go to Applebee's, because that's where everybody is, post tournament, everyone goes to Applebee's. So
everyone except for Johnny
and Gavin, because he's fired.
Hey, there's a chick on my app.
Right, I'm just saying women aren't meant to fight. They have tiny, hollow bones.
Don't you think you're doing a lot of genderizing?
What?
Don't be a pussy. Join Cobra Kai.
I was a natural cobra.
Welcome back to the Queen Cobra podcast, and we get to welcome a Queen Cobra podcast veteran at this point, my very first guest, Matt Lewis. Thank you for coming back.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
The president of the All Valley Tournament Committee, Ron.
Yes.
Big role this year. We entered a new era.
We did enter a new era. We did indeed.
Stepping into the future. All your lines were just so, you were in the trailer. You had that much of an impact.
Yeah, we ended up in the trailer. We got a cold open for episode 6. That was pretty neat and a fantastic surprise. So yeah, it's been really fun for myself and for the rest of the committee to sort of have a high profile this season. That's always cool.
Yeah, very high profile, under a lot of scrutiny as well.
Yes.
Ron, he really came through though.
Ron did come through. I think that he's, like most people in a powerful leadership position, like being president of the All Valley Tournament Committee, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think a lot of my fellow committee members, are all sort of vying and jockeying to figure out some way to take my place. But they can't seem to pull it off, So I think as dumb as Ron seems, he's actually a pretty smart cookie, I think.
Well, he pulled it out big time. And I have to ask you, it has to be the first question, because Carrie Underwood. I have to pause. First of all, the first thing that I'll say is at the very first time I watched it through, I was in so much shock about the fact that she was there. It felt very meta to me to be watching someone I grew up listening to sing a song from the soundtrack of the original Karate Kid during Cobra Kai.
Well,
and so I wasn't sure how I felt about it. And then the second time that I watched it, I cried because it was Carrie Underwood.
Right. Well, I can tell you that day on set, like once she was there and she was shooting her footage and doing like the concert part, and the cameras were pointed at her, she did it out of 6, 7, 8 takes without the crowd, and then probably another 7 or 8 takes with the crowd. But man, like everybody on set was like had snuck in, so everyone was watching, and everyone just had these ridiculous grins on their faces because we were this is not only like one of the pivotal cover songs from the soundtrack for the season 4, but also like Carrie Underwood wanted to show up and sing for like a high school karate tournament. It was pretty amazing. Ron the dentist was able to pull some strings and make that happen. But she was very sweet and very excited to be there. She had started watching Cobra Kai, I think, during season 3. And she got on Twitter and she was really excited about the show and started tweeting about it. And so I think
the misspelling.
Well, yeah, exactly. She didn't spell it right at first, but that's okay. She gets a pass. But I think they reached out to her and they were like, hey, if you want to be on the show, like we think we have an angle to get you in. And, I think Ron justifies it by trying to like make the tournament, bigger and badder and better. And musical guests are one of the ideas that he throws out that gets kind of shut down pretty quickly, but he makes it happen anyway.
It was definitely bigger and better. Even the board, it was a video board this year.
Yeah, it was a video board this year. That there was actually a scene that we shot for episode 10 and it didn't make the cut. Maybe it'll show up on a DVD or something, the extras or cut scenes or whatever. I totally understand why, because it was at the end of the episode and immediately after the tournament. So we're dealing with all of these like really high stakes dramatic conclusions, and they're setting up all the cliffhangers for season 5. And then it initially was a really short episode, or a really short scene, where we just sort of say like, wow, heck of a tournament, see you guys next year or whatever. And then on the day, somebody got really excited and wrote like a scene and handed us these extra pages. And so we had this whole thing where Gavin, the new guy, everyone's sort of congratulating Ron on, a successful tournament. We're all congratulating each other. And then Gavin starts to bitch at us because we spent all the money on Carrie Underwood and went over budget and the video board and blah, blah, blah. So we decided to fire Gavin on the spot and then go to Applebee's, because that's where everybody is, post tournament, everyone goes to Applebee's. So
Everyone except for Johnny.
and Gavin, because he's fired, and Johnny's barred for life nationally. So whatever that's all about.
What
So-
did you get to speak to Carrie Underwood?
I did. When we were there, in the script, oh shoot, what was her name? It wasn't her name, it was somebody else, and I can't think of it right now off the top of my head. But it was a fake name. And I just sort of thought, oh, okay, well, they're having someone come in to play a pop star like Carrie Underwood or, whoever else. But then on the day they were like, oh, no, we actually got Carrie Underwood. And she was, I guess, near or around Georgia or Atlanta or something. So she came in on her big rock star tour bus and was there for the day to film. And then she was on her, Tammy Overton, that was her name. Tammy Overton. But yeah, so she was there and she was like a big fan. So she showed up and her assistant was like fixing her hair in between takes and stuff like that. But she was also kind of looking around and geeking out. And I turned around and she made eye contact with me, and she was looking at me like, whoa, wow, I know who you are. I was like, well, I know who you are. You're the rock star. I'm just some dork that gets to say some words on the show every once in a while. So I went over and introduced myself, and I said, hey, I'm Matt. She said, yeah, I'm so excited. And I was like, well, I'm excited too. Welcome. She's like, yeah, I'm glad to be here. And then after she shot her stuff, she was walking around talking to everybody, talking to Ralph and Billy and Marty and Thomas Ian Griffith and just all the kids. She's a fan too, like just like the rest of us. So she was happy to be there. It was really fun.
It's so cool. Everybody that is on this show is a fan of this show. And I don't know that happens all the time. It's just so amazing.
Yeah, I would think it would. My guess would be like something like Star Wars or, Harry Potter. I don't know. Like, I think there are certain stories that if you get to be a part of that universe, like it's just a mind-blowing blessing. And I think this is one of those, at least for me, because I grew up with these movies, and they're just as important to me as any other movie that's touched me and shaped my childhood and my life and my value system. Like, growing up with people like Mr. Miyagi and Yoda, I just, that's who I am, and like where a lot of my philosophies and thoughts are based, so.
Oh yeah, and definitely a few Star Wars references tossed into the show this season made me very happy. A lot of us had been comparing Robbie and Eli Hawk to Anakin for a long time, and noting the similarities in the arcs that they were having. And I wasn't sure which one was gonna mirror Anakin more, and it seems like it was Robbie.
Yeah, I think so too. And he's got that same sort of conflict within, and he's got pivotal choices that he has to make about, the light side or the dark side, and his father, and all that stuff. So yeah, for sure, I can definitely see those parallels there.
Right. Well, before we move on, I have to tell you, Carrie Underwood was my very first concert as a child. I was 4. I had just seen her on American Idol. I loved her. And
she was on American. She started as an American Idol contestant.
She started that's why she made the reference to like, I love competing.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
She was on American Idol. She was I think the 4th winner of American Idol. And I remember my mom was panicking on the night of the finale of American Idol because if Carrie Underwood didn't win, she thought I was gonna like cry for days. Um, and then she won and they went on tour and I went to the American Idol tour and that was my first tour, my first concert. And I had 102 fever at 5 years old on this tour. And my mom gave me a bunch of Advil and we went to the concert and I slept through the whole thing. And then as soon as Carrie Underwood came out, my mom woke me up. I spent 20 minutes enjoying it and then I went right back to sleep.
Nice. Now, do you remember this? Do you remember seeing her?
I have memories of it. Like, you know what, like when you think about when you're a kid and like, I remember the feelings that I had and I remember the experience, but I couldn't give you the story of the day.
Right. But you've got like fleeting glimpses of something that happened to you when you were really young. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have plenty of photos of me in a size extra large Carrie Underwood shirt because that was the only size they had left. And I was wearing it like a dress and I looked ill. I looked sick.
Nice.
So obviously this was pre-COVID because, now, now if you have the sniffles, you don't leave the house.
Right. Exactly.
But I had 102 fever.
Well, the first concert I ever went to was in probably 88 or 87, maybe even 80. Yeah, it was 87 or 88. But it was a Metallica on the And Justice for All tour. And I was, here's the thing, like I was skateboarding with some friends. I know this isn't Cobra Kai related, so I'll be brief.
No, go ahead. We're not,
Yeah.
on this podcast, we're not just Cobra Kai. We like to explore everything.
Exactly. Well, skateboarding with my friends, and just like most groups of skateboarders, our ages varied wildly. So being in middle school, I was kind of in the middle, but there were kids that were like 7, 8, 9. There were kids that were in high school, and everywhere in between. And we would just sort of find each other and become this mob of skateboarders that would end up in downtown Winston-Salem, where I grew up, because that's where all the stairs and handrails and stuff were. And I was talking to some of the high school kids that I was like genuinely friends with, and they were talking about going to see Metallica. And one of the guys' dads was going to drop him off in Greensboro, which is the next town over, like 20 minutes away, at Greensboro Coliseum. And then he was just going to go across the street and, hang out or whatever, and then pick us up after. I was like, well, if I can get permission, can I go too? And they were like, yeah, sure. We got room in the car. You're tiny, whatever. So I asked my folks and they said yes. And the tickets were like $15 or something like that. And so this dad that they didn't even know dropped me off in the next town over at a Metallica concert. This stuff, I would not let my kid do any of this. Or maybe I would, I don't know. But yeah, we went, and I just remember Queensryche opened up, and I remember when Metallica started, it was general admission, so we were on the floor, and everything was pretty chill until Metallica started, and the whole crowd just like mushed up to the stage, and I was
the mosh pit.
I was still in puberty. This is well before moshing had made it to the metal world, so it was just sort of like just a mush of like this and headbanging and stuff. And but my feet literally did not touch the ground for like 3 hours because I was just smushed in with all these like giant grown-ups. And I was still a growing boy. I mean, I was like 11 or 12 or something like that. So anyway, that's my story. It was pretty awesome. Life has pretty much all been downhill from there, except for, getting married, my kids, Cobra Kai. Other than that, it's just
Other than that, it's all downhill since Metallica.
right.
I think they're going to make a lot of changes to concerts going forward after, I mean, you said it, your feet didn't leave the ground after Astro World incident.
Yeah.
I think there are going to be changes to stuff like that.
Well, I don't even think they have. Do they even do like a general admission floor for like a metal show in a coliseum, in an arena or a coliseum? Like that doesn't even happen anymore, does it? People need chairs. I don't know.
I get general admission to everything. I'm in the pit for every show I've ever been to since I was, with the exception of going to One Direction with my friend in the 9th grade. Everything from about 12 on, I've been in the mosh pit for everything. But that's maybe just the shows I'm going to.
Well, I went the last time I ever did that. Usually I just stand in the back because I'm old. But the last time I ever did go sort of up front, there's this old 80s New York hardcore band called Gorilla Biscuits. And they were like this straight edge posse-core band from back in the day. And they were doing like one of those reunion tours where they're all like my age or older and trying to rock out and not throw out their backs. And I was with some friends and they were like, yo, let's go up front. Let's go up front. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I go up front. The band starts. Within 10 seconds, some kid crowd surfed right over me and went like this and it intentionally grabbed my glasses and my hat in one swoop and disappeared. And so I had to go to the back because I'm nearsighted, so I can't see far away. So I had to like stagger my way back to like the bar or something so I could have a place to sit and just watch this blurry concert for an hour and a half before I got to go home. And I had to get new glasses. So thanks, kid. That was really cool.
Oh, you lost your eyesight. I lost function of my arm. Someone was crowd surfing and they fell on my shoulder and dislocated my shoulder.
Oh God.
Because I couldn't see them coming from behind me and I didn't know they were coming. Because usually you kind of like let the person in front of you know. No one let me know. And this girl just fell on top of me and busted my shoulder. But I had to go into the medical tent and get a fake sling put on. And it led to the band after the show asking me if I was okay. So
well, then it all worked out.
It all worked out. It was okay. I was fine. They were like, are you okay? I was like, I am now. This is so cool. Let me get hurt at every one of your shows. Come check on me.
Yeah, perfect.
So very cool. So yeah, a mini concert you had on set. And it's really good to know that they kept that secret from you too, because I feel like it builds the excitement when you find out like day of that it's going to be this mega superstar.
Yeah, and I think that and kudos to all the background actors that kept that hush hush. I assume that they had to sign some sort of NDA, but I'm not sure. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they were just on the honor system or something. But I'm glad that the word didn't get out and that it was a surprise for all of us. So that's been one of the other fun things about being on Cobra Kai is that for some reason or another, I end up learning like some amazing secret that I have to keep for like a year. So like when I did season 3, reading that script, that's how I learned about Eagle Fang. And so
I remember we talked about that.
Yeah, I had to keep that a secret forever. I had to keep Carrie Underwood a secret forever. I had read the script for season 10, so all the cliffhangers at the end of season 10, I knew about those. But luckily,
episode 10, guys.
yeah.
There are not 10 seasons of Cobra Kai. I just need to preface. I wouldn't usually, you said season 10, and I wouldn't usually correct you, but I don't want listeners to think there are 10 seasons of Cobra Kai.
But there will be.
But there might be.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, episode 10 of season 4. Sorry, thank you for clearing that up for me.
No problem. I could imagine it now, the tweets. When did they renew Cobra Kai for season 10?
Well, you know what I keep doing all the time? I do it I do a lot of these interviews because I love talking to everybody about Cobra Kai. But for some reason, if I'm talking about Owen and Nate, the two younger boys, for some reason, I often call them Bert and Owen, which is not correct. And that's the same person. And I did that the other day, like 5 times, and I didn't get corrected. And then as I was speaking, I realized, wait a minute, I did it again. Shit. So I corrected myself. But yeah, it's Owen and Nate. Those are 2 different people.
I try not to correct because I usually feel like I know what you mean. The people know what you mean. And I really only try to correct people and interrupt them to correct them when it's something like that would spawn a Twitter something if people thought there were 10 seasons.
A horrifyingly egregious error like the one I just made. So we fixed that. Perfect.
But you had to keep other secrets. You knew so much of what was going on in episode 10. I mean, as a Karate Kid fan, knowing Chosen was back.
Yeah.
I mean, the Silver sending Kreese to jail over. I mean, let's just think of the list of horrible things Kreese has done, and he got sent to jail for not even beating up Stingray.
Right.
I think there's irony in that. That's just so funny.
There is, and it's it's funny. Like I'll see fans on social media, they'll point out holes in logic, and at the end of the day, or get upset about it and get frustrated, and I'm just sort of like, this is a show about karate battles, so we're already sort of suspending our disbelief here a little bit. It's also kind of a soap opera anyway, so like, just have fun. Like, my neighbor got really bent out of shape. He's a grown man, he's a couple of years older than me, and he had been watching Cobra Kai, and after season three was the Christmas fight. Yes. Yeah. So after season 3, with that fight in the LaRusso house, he's like, you know what, man, I'm done with Cobra Kai. That shit was the last straw. Like, all these kids just go in, just destroy this house. Like, who do they think they are? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, it doesn't even make sense to me. I'm like, dude, it's a show about karate fights. That means there's going to be a karate fight.
Right.
Like, where are they supposed to have it? In some sort of safely sanctioned place? They're not going to have a tournament every year. So yeah, they fight at the mall, they fight at the pool, they fight at the drive-in, they fight in the LaRusso house, they fight at school. Like, it's just, it's fun. Like,
Yeah. Suspend your disbelief a little bit.
Like, stormtroopers are just constantly shooting at the gang, but they never hit them.
Never hit anything.
Like,
yeah.
Once we got one blast to the shoulder in 3 movies. So figure that one out.
Exactly. I mean, it's entertainment. And how could you focus on anything but the incredible Christmas score that was happening throughout that whole process, that whole fight? The music in that fight was awesome. I mean, the music every season tops itself.
Why are all the LaRusso tables made out of glass? So they can get smashed. That's why. Yeah, it's fine. It's fun.
But yes, Terry Silver was able to send Kreese to jail when the LaRussos weren't. And you can't say that it's about money, because the LaRussos have that too.
Yeah.
But Terry is manipulative and terrifying and scary, and Amanda probably asked nicely. So there's the difference. If you want to suspend your disbelief, just think about it that way.
Yeah, for sure. And, and I think too, like, I mean, it's so cool that once again, they were able to take, this sort of cartoony, one-dimensional character and like flesh it out and make it like really exciting and interesting, make that character very exciting and interesting. And everything that Thomas Ian Griffith does in season 4 is just so good. But I think Kreese, at least for me, like sort of ran his course as the most evil threat in the world. And it was time for, like, Darth Vader's only scary for so long. Oh shit, here's the Emperor. Like, right. Now it's a whole other thing, now Darth Vader is like subservient to this other guy who's even scarier. So I'm really excited to see what happens with Terry Silver moving forward, because even Amanda was sort of like giving Kreese the business, hitting him in the face, and right. Everyone had sort of like gotten accustomed to him and found his weaknesses and got used to him. But man, with Terry Silver, it's going to be a whole new ball game moving forward. And then Chosen, like, man, I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. And I know, speaking of Owen and Nate, I'm friends with both of their moms, Sarah and Hannah, because Owen and Nate are both still minors, and so they have to have a guardian on set, by the rules. And but their moms aren't. I mean, they're just there in case like one of the boys like catches fire or something. They're there, but they're not doing anything. So they're just bored to tears, and often don't have like even a place to be. So they're just sort of like sitting in these lawn chairs in the parking lot. And so when I see them, like, I know that they are interested in chatting, at least for a minute, if I have the time, just to help them pass the time. And I was talking to Hannah, Nate's mom, and she is friends with the actor that plays Chosen. And she said that they had shot his scene in episode 10, season 4, the day before I was there. And he had flown a red eye in from LA straight to Atlanta, went straight to set, shot that scene, which probably took half an hour, and then went straight back to the airport and went back home. Back to LA. So he was in the plane, it was like a 10-hour trip for 20 minutes of work. But I'm sure moving forward in season 5 and onward, it will all be worth it for him and he'll be utilized more.
Well, how much of that do you think was to keep it a secret that because you don't want photos of him circulating around the Georgia, Atlanta area?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because I remember being in for season 1, like a lot of times they'll use codes on signs. They're like these yellow signs that have arrows and stuff. And often it'll be some sort of secret 1 or 2 or 3 character code that lets you know that it guides you to set, especially if you're on crew and you're just trying to figure out like where the location is for the day or for everybody. So like Ozark, which also films in Georgia, the code name for their production is, because it's Beetle Cat Productions. So I think it's either BC or BK. So if you see that on that code, that means that Ozark is filming around, wherever they are. Cobra Kai just always used CK. And in season 1, they had shuttle buses going from base camp to location like they normally do. But those shuttle buses had big Cobra Kai signs on them. It was almost like they were sort of promoting themselves. But that was season 1, and things have changed since then. So now it's like a pretty locked down, secretive thing.
Top secret.
Well, some of those locations, like the Miyagi-Do house, are at the sound stages, but they're outdoors. So if you're driving by the sound stages and you know what you're looking at and where to look, like you can see the Miyagi house from the street. So it's, not something that they really want to get out there at this point, I don't think. So things have gotten more secretive over the years, for sure.
Yeah, more secretive, but also the more popular they get, the more people find it and put out leaks and spoilers. And us, some of the very loyal content creators, and we try to keep it off of our feeds as much as we can. But I definitely knew a few things that I wasn't supposed to before the season started, and part of me wishes I hadn't. Most of me wishes I hadn't.
Right.
It's always like you find out and you're like, oh, and they're like, oh, I didn't want to know that at all. But
well, I'll have fans come to me, and it's almost like a gotcha kind of situation. Like they'll hit me on Twitter or something and be like, I just heard this thing and I put 2 and 2 together, so I figured out what you guys have done. And I'm like, I mean, if you know more than I do, because I don't even know this thing that you're talking about. Or like there was a lot of theories about Terry Silver bribing the committee, because there was some sort of confusion as to like if Cobra Kai was banned again, or Terry Silver was banned, or Kreese, or both of them, or whatever. I don't know. Again, it's one of those things where like, if you want to point holes in that sort of logic, like you can do it pretty easily on this show, because who gives a shit? Like, we just want to see Terry Silver show up. Like, it doesn't matter if it's only like 95% logically justified. I don't care. But with fans, trying to like get me with that sort of thing, I just kept thinking like, first of all, like, I don't think the committee would do that. Second of all, I don't even think that episode has been written yet. So like, I don't know where you're getting this info, but I don't know. So it did feel good to know that like we weren't the ones that had been corrupted. And of course, Terry Silver bribes that ref instead, which totally makes sense for something that he would do. But it wasn't us. Like,
no,
we are pure of heart. Like, we have nothing but the quality and the reputation of the All Valley tournament to be concerned about. That's our main focus. I always say like we're more like the Jedi Council than anything else. Like, we can't be corrupted. You know what I mean? You don't show up and like corrupt Yoda and Mace Windu. Like they're uncorruptible. You know what I mean? So that's that.
I love how easily you just slip into we, the committee, as if you're living it right now. It's a lifestyle. Ron has taken over.
It is. Well, and it was really cool to go back for season 3. And that was a big surprise for me. And I only knew like a couple of weeks prior, but finally being reunited with my fellow committee members in season 4 was really awesome. We're all good friends. We keep up, we made friends shooting season 1, and we text each other and call and keep up. And Keith and Kurt and Brian, basically everyone except for Kara Ann, we're all locals anyway. So we'll see each other, here or there. Kurt and I ended up working together on a movie a couple of years ago. That was cool. And then Kara Ann is just like, she's living this amazing gypsy lifestyle. Her and her husband own this company called Doggy Do Good that they started, and they sell like environmentally conscious dog supplies. So they have like biodegradable poop bags and stuff like that, and really healthy dog food, I think, things of that nature. And they've just had this baby that's like a year old, or very young. And they bought this RV, and they just sort of like gypsy around the country, caravan around the country, and live where they want. And then if she's got work, she'll fly into Atlanta or wherever the work is and pick up the gig. But so she's sort of local, but she's also cruising around with her husband in this RV all the time, and her baby. So
That's so cool. And it's so great that you guys all stay in touch and that you guys got to come back together.
Very fun.
And big decisions were made in this meeting, your cold open. It was, for me, as someone who has been not critical is the wrong word, because it's a positive criticism of feminism and the representation of women on the show. And for a while, it only being Sam that was a leading female karate student on the show. Good to see that whole episode. I mean, but specifically separating the divisions between male and female. I mean, a lot of people would argue that it's more feminist to have them fight together, but acknowledging that there is a female interest as well as a male interest, and that there is deserving of a separate division, that was for me really great.
Yeah, and I agree, and also done like through the guise of humor, because I swear to God, like when we were reading that script, or when I was reading that script, when Gavin, the new guy, starts, he does this presentation, he's showing video of Aisha getting kicked in the face or whatever, and he's like, yeah, just so this is your thing, like you're encouraging boys to punch and kick girls. And honestly, like when Aisha was in season 1, it didn't occur to me for a second that was probably a bad idea. Like until I read that scene in season 4, I was like, yeah, no, that's right. There should be a separate division. That just makes sense. We do that with all other sports. Like, yeah, okay, I get it. But she was the only girl at the time, and I don't know. So it was that was a really funny, insightful way to sort of justify the making the two divisions, I think. But just in bringing in like more strong female characters, there's more diversity in the cast than ever before. That's really cool too. And then also just in general, bringing in this like new wave of younger students, and maybe like one could argue that possibly for the first time ever in the history of television, when the original cast gets a little older and you've got to bring in more kids, it makes sense, and the kids like make the show better, and they've got exciting through lines that we're just starting to track. My God, what's going to happen to Kenny? Like just in all those kids, so that's really cool. Usually, especially like in the 80s, they had to do it. There were all these family sitcoms, and there was always like one or two cute little kids. And then, they're on the show for a while, and suddenly these cute little kids are like 15, and their voices have changed, and they're really tall, and they're not cute little kids anymore. So suddenly they discover this cousin that they had that suddenly needs a place to live or whatever. They're barely justified. But they didn't do that with Cobra Kai, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, having all those new kids in is really neat.
Yeah, and they weave them in such interesting ways. Like obviously Kenny's connection wasn't to one of the senseis, it was to Robbie. So, for whatever reason, if the older original generation of the Karate Kid, if they start to phase out of the show, Kenny has a connection to one of the original cast members of Cobra Kai. So like it's intertwined in a way where it could continue without those original Karate Kid characters if it ever needed to.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that they're already starting to open those doors. The big three have always talked about spinoffs, but they've never been specific about what they have in mind. And this is just me just spitballing. I don't know, but I would assume, I mean, I do know for sure during season 3, I was just like hanging out with Ralph Macchio like you do, and I was trying not to dork out, but I was just sort of trying to be cool and chat with him while we were wasting some time in between setups. And I asked him, because we were filming season 3, so we'd just seen 2. And I think so I can't remember the timeline exactly, but we'd either just moved to Netflix or it was about to happen or something. I don't remember. But I think I asked him something like, if season 3 blows up on Netflix like we think it's going to, what do you think is going to happen moving forward? Like what are the plans? And he said at that time, filming season 3, that they were hoping for 6 or 7 seasons total. Now that was a few years ago, so things may have evolved since then, but I would imagine, it's just a guess, but I would imagine that Ralph and Billy, as much as they love Cobra Kai, they're probably sick of like the karate and the wear and tear on their bodies and all that stuff. So I would imagine that 6 or 7 seasons is a good ballpark for them, and they'll probably wish to move on after that, I guess, having played these characters for so many decades, in and out. But they could still show up for cameos and stuff like that, and still part of the the plot lines, just not there all the time. And then the focus can go more on the younger kids that will be adults by then, and then the younger kids. And so I don't know, the options are the opportunities are there for lots more storytelling moving forward. And I think that as long as we've still got the same creative team in place, like it's going to keep being awesome.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. There are so many avenues for whatever role different cast members want to take. If someone wants to take a step back, there is room for that at this point. And it's just very cool. I
think
right now we're heavy focused on our older characters at the moment, our originals. That I feel like this season focused very heavily on them, and not too much, not where it was noticeable that the younger cast had taken what you would consider maybe a backseat this season, but the focus was really on Silver and Kreese and Johnny and Daniel, and those 2 sets of relationships. And the season, like I keep saying, it felt like a chess match. Like I was watching a game of chess between Silver and Kreese the whole time. So
it was really well crafted too. Like you could really see Terry Silver's journey through the season, because my impression when we first see him is that he's really sincere when he says that he doesn't want to have anything to do with Cobra Kai. Like he's made all these adjustments in his life and his lifestyle, and he's trying to turn over a new leaf and be a better person. And if that means tofu brunches with his girlfriend, then he's game. But then Kreese just keeps messing with him and provoking him, and so at some point in time, I still don't think he really cares about anything except humiliating Kreese and shutting him up. Because I think Kreese has just been holding this Vietnam thing over his head for decades, and it's driven him insane. And so he just wants to get rid of him. And so I think, opening the Cobra Kai franchise all over the valley, like if he really does that, it's still just to spit in Kreese's face, not to take over karate in the valley. I don't think he really cared in Karate Kid 3 about that. He doesn't care now. It's really just like, to your point, just like a battle of wills with Kreese that so far he's winning.
Yeah, and it's really scary. I mean, like you said, Kreese was the big bad for so long, but he did have a weakness, and he did have a sensitive spot for certain people. I mean, we saw it with Johnny, and I do think he genuinely cared to help Tori, because I think he did see a little piece of himself in her. And saw a little piece of Johnny in her, and a little piece of, the only people he cares about in the world. So there was definitely a little bit of a soft spot for her as well.
Yeah.
Terry Silver does not have a soft spot for anyone.
No.
And he has now, quote unquote, shed his weakness by putting Kreese in jail, which,
Yeah.
by the way, just so you know, I said in one of my very first videos, before I'd even interviewed anybody, that Kreese belonged in jail. And I got what I wanted, and now I'm not happy about it.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Isn't it funny how the big three do that? I had me convinced. I was like, he's got to go to jail for all of this terrible stuff that he's done. It doesn't matter what his backstory is. Like, it's just, and then Terry Silver comes in, and they're going back and forth. And I'm like, damn, why do I feel bad for Kreese? Like, what the hell?
Well, and really, like, and that's another one of those logic holes in the show that, like, if it were completely logically explained, and if it were 100% realistic, like, most of the cast would be in prison right now for all of the things that they've done. Just the high school fight alone would have some of those people still locked up. So, and the LaRusso house, like, sure, they didn't call the cops, but surely some neighbors heard something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I don't know.
Well, before I give you a chance, we're getting close to our hour here. We got about 15 minutes left, and I want to also touch on some of the other changes that the committee made, because we did talk about the inclusion of a female division, but I mean, it was a whole upheaval of the system. You included different skills events, and as someone who took martial arts and did karate tournaments like the All Valley, I mean, not to that scale at all, but I did do the karate tournament circuit in the Northeast, and we had weapons, we had forms, which is essentially kata,
Right.
And we had sparring, which is, the main event of the Karate Kid. And we had like demonstration events and board breaking and skills set to music and all these self-defense demonstrations and stuff like that. Everything earned you points. And as a kid, I wasn't like the very best at sparring because I was very small and very like Kenny like, where I was much smaller than everybody that I was going up against. But I ended up accumulating enough points throughout the year, throughout the circuit, in all of the other events, and then doing okay in sparring, where I ended up being like, in my age bracket, the grand champion of the Northeast circuit that year for Kenpo. So it was cool for me to see, because for years I had said, this is an unrealistic karate tournament because there's so much else that goes into it and so many ways you can earn points. And it was really cool for me as, someone who actually did it, to see it done the way that it is done now.
Yeah. And I have no martial arts background at all. Like the only experiences I've ever had were, my son doesn't do it anymore, but when he was younger, we're talking like kindergarten, first grade, something like that. There were these kids on the playground that were like huge jerks, and he was getting roughed up and stuff because he's a really nice kid, which, when he's older, that's going to pay off really well because he's just nice and he's sweet and considerate and he's good with his sister. And, the girls are going to go crazy for him when he gets a little older, the boys or whatever, however it pans out, it's fine. But at the time, like, he was being a little too nice and he was getting roughed up, and I sort of had to go to him and be like, hey, look, if somebody is, literally these kids were like grabbing him by his hooded sweatshirt and swinging him around and trying to steal his Pokemon cards and stuff. And I would see it happen on the playground after school and have to go like yell at these kids and then yell at their moms for not paying attention to their jerk kids. And so at some point we put him in Taekwondo, and I would take him every Saturday. And I also sort of had to say like, hey, don't start fights, but if somebody is swinging you around by your sweatshirt and trying to steal your Pokemon cards and beating up your best friend, punch him in the face, like, as hard as you can. And you might get in trouble at school, but you won't get in trouble at home if you're looking out for yourself and you're looking out for your friends. And as you get older, you'll realize the differences in those situations. But taking my son to Taekwondo is really my only martial arts experience at all. But, you know, when people started telling me, like you were saying, like, oh yeah, this is totally a thing that tournaments usually have. It's not something that Cobra Kai invented. They're just making it actually more realistic. And then also for the purposes of the show, adding in all of these other ways for the dojos to get points, as opposed to like us just watching more montages of more fights and, you know, all that stuff. So they were able to say, like, you know, before the fights even start, here's the, you know, the stakes are already high. Like this dojo is really low. They need this many points and, you know, whatever. And we did it. Well, we need math. And they did it basically. I remember reading I think it was an article or something, but they were talking about something that George Lucas always did. And he called it a pointer scene. And a pointer scene is where literally someone has like a wand or something and they're pointing at a board or something saying like, okay, if this happens, then this is the result of this. And if this happens, then Miyagi-Do wins. And if this happens, then Cobra Kai wins. And they were able to sort of pepper that in without like being so overt about it and beating us over the head with, you know, that sort of thing. Literally like, we're going to fly into this thing. And if we put a missile in this thing, that blows up the Death Star, you know, like the pointer scene.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they managed to do that in a unique way where it didn't feel like we were just being given details.
Right.
And we felt like we were going through the experience with them, which is
Right.
very cool. And as I always say, they do an absolutely incredible job, the big three and everybody involved. Just so awesome. But I want to talk about you before we get out of here because
okay. Sounds great.
You do me the great pleasure of coming on here and being a guest on my podcast. And I like to try to repay the favor by letting you promote all the things that you're working on outside of Cobra Kai, because I mean, hey, why not watch more of you?
Not?
Right?
I did a movie. It actually filmed a long time ago. It might have been like 4 or 5 years ago. And I have a very small role. I say like literally a couple of lines. But I got to say these couple of lines to Ellen Burstyn in a movie called Queen Bees, which is this really sweet movie with a huge all-star cast. You got like Ellen Burstyn and Jane Curtin and Christopher Lloyd, Loretta Devine. It was just huge all-star cast. And it's about Ellen Burstyn. She's a widow, and she's got a grown daughter and a grandson. And the actor that plays the grandson is a local actor named Matt Barnes. And we've worked on stuff before, so it was cool to be on set and get to see Matt again. But she is a widow and she's living by herself and she's getting older, and she accidentally like sets her kitchen on fire a little bit. And her daughter's been trying to get her to go to this nursing home anyway. And so that happens. And so the setup is like, okay, this is the last straw. Mom, you're going to this nursing home. And when she gets there, she realizes it's a lot like high school. There's cliques. There's, you know, cliques of people that she likes and cliques of people that she doesn't like. And there's social politics, and she falls in love, and, you know, hijinks ensue from there. But it's on, of course, pay-per-view and DVD, but it's also on Showtime right now. And then right at the end of last year, I was able to work on 2 movies. One is called Brothers with Josh Brolin and Brendan Fraser and Peter Dinklage and Glenn Close. And then I worked on another movie called The Battle of Bushy Run, which is Brothers is a comedy. They're still keeping the plot under wraps on IMDb, so I don't want to go into more detail, but should be out, if not in 2022, then probably 23. And then another movie called The Battle of Bushy Run, same time frame. I have no idea. Probably 23 would be my guess. But it's a historical drama about this fort that was under siege. And I played Benjamin Franklin,
Cool.
which was, yeah, it was neat. Like, it's a fun little scene, but I'm Ben Franklin. It's just one scene. But that was a cool thing. And it was also weird to be in this like Foley period costume and the Ben Franklin wig. And I was clean shaven. And of course I had contacts in because these glasses are not period. But after a while of being on set for that, I sort of like just hid, and it was in a studio, so I didn't have a trailer. I had like a room that they gave me, and I just sort of hid in there after a while. I would go to set and film when I was, summoned, but people would see me, and I kept forgetting that I was dressed that way, and so people would go, "Oh, Mr. Franklin, let me open the door for," and it's like, oh, okay, all right, great. Yes, I look ridiculous. I get it. but everyone was really sweet, and hopefully the movie's good. And it was a really fun experience. So yeah, Brothers with Josh Brolin, The Battle of Bushy Run, where I played Benjamin Franklin. Queen Bees is on Showtime now with Ellen Burstyn. And Queen Bees is a very sweet film that you could definitely watch with the whole family. I think if it's not PG-13, it might even be PG. So that's what I got going on. And then, auditions are always rolling in. So, we'll see what happens moving forward in this year. You never know.
Good stuff. You got to keep your eye on all your social media as well as your IMDb page. I will have Matt's IMDb page linked in the episode notes, and as well as all of your social media handles. I know Instagram is one that you use, and Twitter is one that you use a lot. If you want to plug away at where people can find you and hear from you and communicate with you.
Yeah, on Instagram, it's at Matt Lewis Actor, and the same for Twitter. And I don't know what my Facebook handle was that I created 20 years ago or whatever. But if you look me up, I'm on there. So yeah, find me.
Yes. And like I said, I'll have all that below as well. And you can find me at Queen Cobra Pod, Instagram, Twitter. I don't know where you're listening to this or viewing it, but YouTube, Spotify. I am in the process of getting it approved to go on multiple other platforms as well right now. So we're making some big moves in 2022. And for someone who was my first guest, it's really exciting to talk to you now a year later when I'm in a different place in my life, when this podcast has elevated itself as well, and different logo than the last time that you talked to me, and all just very cool things to it's probably about a year later.
Yeah, it's awesome. Very exciting.
Well, I appreciate you coming on as always, and look forward to maybe seeing more Ron in the future in Cobra Kai.
One can only hope.
Crossed.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It was great to talk to you, as always.